I completely felt like I was going to be killed. Everything did flash in front of me.
We are all human beings. I don't have a higher claim over your life and property than you, and you don't have a higher claim over my life and property than me. I don't have a higher authority over you, and you don't have a higher legitimized authority over me. But somehow, when cops put on their uniforms, badges, and guns, they think that they have a higher claim over the life and property of others. They think they have a higher authority. And if you pull a gun on a cop, you are not going to get away with it unless in the cop's mind you have some kind of legitimized authority over him. And that's what we're going to look at. Full-scale cognitive dissonance in play. This is absolutely fascinating. Here's an example of a cop being treated exactly like cops always treat other non-law enforcement human beings. We all know if you don't obey a cop's rules, you get a firearm or taser pointed at you and you're threatened with arrest because you didn't comply with the magical pieces of paper of politicians called laws, and you didn't comply with the magical human beings called law enforcers who wear the magical uniforms with the magical badges, which, as far as their actions indicate, seem to cause them to falsely believe that they have special authority, rights, and privileges over other human beings. It's a complete fiction, and most people believe in and play along with this fiction because to fail to play along invites the immoral, unjust force of uniformed authoritarians. But this is a situation where a cop gets a strong and sobering dose of his own authoritarian medicine. On May 31st, Lucas County Sheriff's Deputy Alan Gaston went to a local IRS domestic terror cell office on personal business while on duty and in full uniform. 33-year-old Seth Eklund, a security guard contracted through Federal Protective Service, told the deputy he couldn't have a weapon on the premises. That's their policy, that's their rule, that's their law. And Eklund aims to make sure he enforces that law on everybody, even individuals who choose to wear costumes and badges. After a brief discussion, Deputy Gaston turned to leave the office. Security guard Eklund pulled his gun on Gaston and tried to detain him. A 911 call was made reporting a taxpayer, not a deputy, but a taxpayer with a gun. Now, let's be completely fair about this. On the one hand, I love how the tables have turned as Eklund stripped the cop of any perceived authority. On the other hand, what's happening here is a criminal action on the part of the IRS's security guard. Both of these people are mere human beings. Gaston wasn't harming, threatening to harm, or stealing somebody else's stuff. Eklund, on the other hand, is initiating threats of deadly force with Gaston having done nothing wrong. Just because you perceive a law to be legitimate doesn't make it so. That's not how the natural world works. Here's what happened when the Toledo cops showed up.
How you doing? So I stopped up here to ask a question about...
Gentlemen, I need to talk to you before he talks to you.
We're right here. Okay, again, I stopped up to ask a question. If you want to pull aside, that's fine. I stopped up to ask a question about some tax situation. When I walked in, he said, if you're up here on official business, I said no.
Well, that gentleman out there, he's not here on official business. He came in here with his weapons. I told him he couldn't have them. He had his hands on his weapons. I told him to remove his hands from his weapons. He didn't listen. I drew on him.
This cop's like, what the frick we got going on here?
Even if he's an officer?
You're not allowed to have your weapons on federal property. Even us, even you, unless you're here on official business.
You understand what these cops are saying when they're asking, even us? What they're saying is, you mean to tell me your laws and policies apply to us? The implication is, you gotta be kidding me. We've always believed that badges and costumes granted us special rights. This is blowing our authoritarian, order-following minds. Now we, special and privileged we, have to follow your rules?
Which right now, you're responding to a call, you're on official business, you're good to go.
He said, well, you can't leave your weapon up here. You're going to have to take everything off. I said, well, do you have a locker? He said, no, we don't. You're going to have to take it to the car. And I said, well, I have been up here once before.
310, you can have the air.
And they never said not. So another gentleman stood up and said, hey, you got to do what he says or you're being disruptive, I believe he said.
I wasn't here.
No, I'm just saying. I said, okay. And I said, that's fine. I just said, but there's no locker, and this is what I'm doing. I said, so there's no locker?
You still got it on, right?
Yeah, it's on the suit.
Yeah, I still got mine, he still got his gun.
And there's film to see, and he goes, get your hands off your gun. I said, get your hands off your weapon. I said, I don't have my hands on my weapon. He immediately goes and he draws his weapon out, points it at me. I said, what is wrong with you?
Yeah, Gaston, I hope you're listening to yourself. And I hope every cop who watches this video is listening. What's wrong with you law enforcers who think you have a right to treat us the way this guy treated Gaston?
And I said, I'm leaving. He follows me out. He said, it's too late now. You're going in cuffs.
And how many videos have you seen where cops say the exact same thing to non-cops? Well, you didn't follow my orders. It's too late now. You didn't comply. We're taking your ass to jail.
So he follows me around the corner here. And I said, you need to go back inside. I hit the elevator to get off. He said, no. He said, no, you're not getting off.
Did you even, like, say anything to him that he
I
shouldn't?
told him, I asked him, are you here on official business? He said no. Okay, you have to take your weapons off the property. You cannot have them here. He asked me if there was someplace where he could store them. I said, no, there's no place here on the property that you can store them. You're gonna have to take them off the property.
What's the law? What's the law as far as somebody bringing? I understand your.
And this is just how I'm
what's the-
saying it.
What's the law of bringing in firearms in the government and like when you're?
Well,
and he's not an official, even though he's on county. He's supposed to. He's on county time. This we'll check all the records. You have to do. But he's coming here on personal business, and he's not an official business. He can't bring his firearm.
As long as he's in uniform,
Unless you
But
can
he's
get
not-
the uniform.
But he's not an official business.
doesn't matter. As long as he's in uniform, because
Cops really believe this. As long as we're wearing this magical costume, we can do what we want and we're immune from your laws and policies. This is the perfect example to show that it's not about the uniforms. It's not about the badges. It's about man-made laws being inherently illegitimate and immoral. But they can't see that.
I mean, what if he? And here's my what if. What if he just got off shift and was going to take care of this because he doesn't live in the city or close to here before he goes home? Okay, and then it just, and I'm just playing devil's advocate for you so you can understand. Say he does put all of his stuff in his car and locks his car up, somebody breaks in and steals all of his stuff. Now we got some criminal
Well, he
running
probably
around.
shouldn't be here on
You know what I'm
court
saying?
time either. You know.
Well, that,
Okay, again,
that-
I just came to ask a simple question.
That's up to him.
Again,
And I got
I'm just
that.
trying to get all the facts
He
straight.
said, call because this.
Yeah.
Yes, he pointed his gun at me.
arrest that son of a bitch.
Did you hear the other cop? Arrest that son of a bitch. Basically, what right does he have to point his gun at you? You're a cop. What's the answer? The same right you cops have of pointing your guns at other innocent people who have not committed a real crime.
He arrests, you can't point your gun at someone.
Yeah,
And this isn't even a life-threatening situation. And I turned around and walked away, and he's still pointing at me straight. And
I
other civilians.
I didn't see that.
My whole
There's
issue.
cameras here. There's cameras. There are cameras here. Please look at your cameras.
My whole issue is that he's in uniform. I mean,
That's common sense.
it's clear that he is a deputy.
It's common sense. He has a costume on. So it's clear that he's a deputy and immune from your policies.
No, yeah.
That's like one of us coming up here dressed like this.
I was told about this
Yeah.
after the fact.
Yeah, no, and I'm just saying,
Look
I
at the
mean,
cameras.
he can walk over to the government building and walk anywhere in government center he wants dressed like that.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, I mean, now if I go over there and I'm in civilian clothes, I have to secure my weapon.
This is what happened.
So-
This is what happened to me. Okay, I was told that there was a security incident, and I didn't know. I didn't know.
He's
it
a
was
hothead, and he's a wannabe, and he's going to cause some issues.
I didn't
He
know
put
it
it
was.
gun and pointed it right at
I
me.
didn't know it was a law enforcement official.
Yeah.
So when
Neither did
I
we
heard-
until we came up
So
here.
I came in, and I thought you were here to. you were here to help, and I didn't know it was.
No, it wasn't me. And you
Yeah,
know what?
I
I figured this guy's got some issues, so I'm gonna just leave anyway. No, it's too late. I'm putting cuffs on you. Stop. And he comes out and he's screaming while pointing his gun at me. So when I pull my phone out to take a picture of it, he puts it away. I said, well, there's cameras in there anyway.
Yeah. Personally, I'd haul his ass in. I don't care if he's a FPS employee or not.
Yeah.
There's no fucking reason.
not.
I quit carrying my gun up here.
Now, just as interesting is this news story for the same incident.
I completely felt like I was going to be killed. Everything did flash in front of me, everything.
Captured on surveillance camera, security guard Seth Eklund points a gun at Sheriff Deputy Alan Gaston while the deputy on duty was visiting the Toledo IRS office.
Nobody's seen anything like this. You don't see a security guard pulling in on a fully uniformed officer pointing a gun.
The incident happened on May 31st. Gaston, a defensive tactics instructor, says he had questions about an IRS letter and was there to get a phone number.
He said, you're going to have to take your gun and duty belt off. And I said, well, I can't do that. I said, do you have a gun locker where I can lock it in? I'd be willing to do that. And he said no, and I noticed that he was getting a little angry.
At that point, the sheriff deputy says he was asked to leave. In the meantime, an IRS employee threatened to call 911.
911, where's your emergency?
Yeah, we got a taxpayer at the IRS office at 433 North Summit that has a gun and he won't leave the premises.
You gotta love that. Relegating the cop to a mere taxpayer, completely stripping him of his imagined authority with that nondescript 911 call.
Eklund then tells Gaston to take his hand off of his gun. In a police report, the deputy said only his forearm was resting against the gun because of his casual stance. Feeling uncomfortable, Gaston says he tried to leave, at which point the security guard tries to detain him.
He came around that corner with the gun out. You better stop, you better stop. I swear to God, stop. And he goes into that position, which is this one right here. I'll never forget that position. And as I'm looking at him, I just need to get to the door. First and foremost, again, the civilians were very scared.
It was the first time the deputy of 34 years had ever had a gun pointed at him. The deputy believes the security guard's actions were racially motivated.
The fact that he called 911 and never mentioned it was a deputy sheriff. And the fact that I feel that this security guard wanting to put cuffs on me and detain me, which is completely so far-fetched. I can't comprehend that he would think that. I felt like he didn't even see the uniform. All he saw was color.
I believe he's a black male. He's heading downstairs now.
We have video of literally Deputy Gaston putting his hands up like this. We don't need to guess. So these comments in the 911 call in terms of not identifying a deputy sheriff being in the office, but a black man with a gun is, as you asked the question, that sounds racist to me.
And that would be nothing but speculation. What Eklund was doing here was enforcing policy. The exact same thing Deputy Gaston's been doing for over 3 decades on the police force.
The security guard followed the deputy to the elevator. That's when Gaston pulled out his phone and took a photo of Eklund holding the gun. It's only then he holstered his weapon. The blade reached out to the IRS and it declined to comment, as did Eklund's lawyer and the sheriff's office. The security guard's former employer, Paragon Systems, did not return our calls. Sheriff Deputy Gaston is now on sick leave after filing a civil lawsuit against Eklund and his former employer.
The counts itself are assault and battery, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and false imprisonment.
These are all charges that could legitimately be brought against almost every single cop every day of the week. It's ironic to hear a cop now claim the same mental and emotional abuse that they inflict on people on a routine basis.
Those are the claims.
Meanwhile, Deputy Gaston is receiving therapy for the psychological damages he says the incident caused, but he hopes to return to work at some point, thankful to still be alive.
Sometimes I don't know what to think sometimes, but I do find myself going back to what if a lot.
Guys, there's this strange barrier built into the minds of the masses where when you get harassed and robbed by people who aren't cops, you can fight back and there are no repercussions. Everybody sees the defensive use of force against a non-law enforcement agent of the state as righteous, good, and noble. But if you resist a cop who's initiating criminal activity on you, if you defend yourself against their unwelcome intrusion into your life, if you take the moral high ground and use justified defensive action against a law enforcer, they'll gather all their available resources and hunt you down as they treat you like a criminal when all you did was defend yourself from the cop's criminal activity. Now, the cop's getting a taste of his own medicine by someone who's claiming a higher authority than him, and it's really interesting to see the shoe of authoritarianism mentally arrest the cops who are trying to sort this out. And keep in mind, the only thing that's keeping these cops from arresting this IRS guard and treating them like cops always treat the general population is the question of who has more magical authority in this situation. This whole thing reminds me of this photo of this horse right here. The only thing that's keeping this massive 1,200-pound beast standing in submission to this 2-pound plastic chair is the barrier that's been placed in his own mind. This is exactly the kind of barrier these cops are now having to grapple with, and it's as humorous as it is ironically imbecilic. So the cops were arguing that those policies and laws don't apply to them. And guys, that's true. But it's also true of the laws by which they themselves try to foist on the masses. Their laws don't legitimately apply to us either. Just because a man says a law applies to you doesn't make it so. And just because a man is able to get 535 of his buddies to agree that that law applies to you still doesn't make it so. And just because that man and his 535 buddies tell you that they applied the magic of so-called legislative action to enact the law, none of that hocus pocus can make any command of any man apply to you just because they say it does. Just in case you were wondering, here's the federal policy Eklund was trying to enforce. The U.S. General Services Administration, which sets the rules and regulations governing conduct on federal property, says, federal law prohibits the possession of firearms or other dangerous weapons in federal facilities and federal court facilities by all persons not specifically authorized by Title 18 United States Code Section 930. Violators will be subject to fine and or imprisonment for periods up to 5 years. Armed law enforcement officers conducting personal business are not specifically listed as authorized persons under that law. Eklund tried to enforce the policy by pulling a gun on an innocent man, and he lost his job. And think of that. A cop can kill somebody on camera, get paid administrative leave, and keep his job and be counted as a hero. This story highlights the nonsense of man-made laws. Leave your thoughts about this for the world and the Google Thought Police in the comments section below. If you guys enjoy these videos, be sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the bell notification icon, give it a thumbs up, and share it with everybody you know. Also, check out over 100 hard-hitting designs in the shirt store, and if you want to support more content, hit me up on Patreon or PayPal. All those links will be in the description and in the pinned comment. I'll see you guys in the next heavily censored Shadow Ban video.